Good morning. I can't believe this is the 50th one. Actually, I've done more than 50, but I've been following this COVID-19 since we've begun this quarantine pandemic from the very beginning. And my specialty is mitochondria and our oxygen needs in the brain that prepare us to evolve and to deal with whatever comes about in the environment. We need that oxygen. That's how we've evolved. That's what's made it possible. And it's very interesting that the animals that this virus seems to come from are nocturnal, they are echolocaic, they don't have the oxygen needs that we do. And so it's a very hypoxic environment. These are hypoxic animals, the civets and even the bats, if you consider where they're living in the caves. And so the virus developed in this hypoxic environment, and it's feeding on those who are hypoxic for one reason or another, or glycolytic, heavily into the glucose processing, the obese, the diabetics, and also how the metals pair into this. Now, my theory as to where our mitochondria come from is pretty specific, and people don't talk about it too much, but I talk about it because I studied the microcephaly in Northeast Brazil when I was at Hopkins and saw these metals in my first observation of the brain scans and the calcified deposits in the brain. I had been studying manganese. I thought, my God, that looks like manganese may have created that. So at the very first conference at Johns Hopkins, in the first hour, they were talking about the mosquito, and I was looking for manganese in the Brazilian environment, and lo and behold, I found it. Not only did I find it, but let's talk about that. So Brazil, and I'm surprised. I'm trying to look at what's going on in Brazil now. Here's the rainforest. Here are all the places where the microcephaly is. Just a stream of cases, about 20,000 cases. And guess what? These children are still being born, right? And it's a very dry, this is very wet, this is very wet, and this is very, this is very arid. This is almost like desert. Not dessert, desert. I think it's called desert. Oh gosh. I eat too much dessert. That's how I spell it naturally. Okay, so in the desert. And so it's desert-like. And so they are very dependent on a sole water source that comes down from this area. Well, right over here, up the hill, the little hill here, and is an iron ore mine called, it's in Minas Gerais, San Marco iron ore mine. I don't know if you remember that. But it had a huge eruption. It was 8 times more production of iron, but way over its production. And it was bursting at the seams. And they were leading up to this, and it burst. I don't know if you remember that. About 9 months before the microcephaly came out, this thing burst. Check it out. It burst, and 50 million gallons of iron ore sludge. And that iron ore is iron. And how do they get iron out of the bedrock? Manganese. There's no other way to get it out. Unless you sit there with a hammer for 100 million years. Manganese gets it out. Manganese. And when there's too much in the water and it gets kind of brown, they put aluminum in there. So how aluminum makes things worse. But these make it, these are very reactive together. So this is where the iron ore mine was. And 2 years previous, going back, there was a 2-year record drought. So everything was really, really dry for 2 years. And so these people were drinking water, and there was some, this stuff flows downstream. And if you look at the underwater, I learned a lot from this. I learned a lot. I had to track down manganese and when does manganese. That's when I realized that manganese in first trimester, try one, we keep coming back to try one, no manganese, no iron. Women are supposed to be anemic. Doctors, please just let them be anemic. Just stop giving them iron and see what happens. It's a natural thing. And lo and behold, it's zinc and copper are doing all the kind of metal work in first trimester. It's like something's had, it's a zero gravity kind of outer space kind of thing. And we talk about that zero gravity point when we talk about jumping rope. Do you remember, if you're following the series, jumping rope has that zero gravity point at the tip of it while we're gathering everything together, while we're pulling like a lightning activity together. We're jumping up and we're pulling around. So everything's kind of working at the same time. Plus we have that zero gravity point. We need to study that because that's kind of what's happening here. All this 1 trillion cells, 1 trillion neurons are being created within a 3-4 month period. I mean, it's outrageous. So, and then we only end up with 100 billion here. And the dichotomy of low oxygen in the first trimester, and then all that matters is oxygen because we have evolved in an oxygenated environment. This is kind of a review, but it's new science, so we need to pick it up as much. Stay oxygenated as I give you this information, and it will piece itself together, and you can piece it together too. It's keeping an oxygenated brain. We can process everything in our environment. That is flow. That is the benefits of mindful meditation. That is the benefits of cardiovascular exercise. That more oxygen gets to our brains. It's oxygen, especially for the brain, heart, and lungs. So let's see. So this thing bursts. Finally, 8 times more production years for like 6, 8, 10 years. It was just making 8 times more iron ore pellets than it was built to take. And it eventually exploded into the environment. And guess what? I mean, I don't know if you've been following it, but there's some huge, oh God, I meant to make that the other way. Shark, they're getting bigger and bigger. And you just notice it up the, so, there's a, you always have to look at the opposite of, too much iron is bad for us, but iron and manganese in the fish world, it pries oxygen out of water. So they're like, all right, man, supersize me. So, they're kind of in the plant world in that way, in that they pry oxygen out of water using manganese, fish and plants. And other things too that I'm not familiar with, but those are the main ones. And yet we have to take it into the air unless there's an emergency in our system, a concussion or stroke, where the mitochondria release manganese in emergency situations. They hold on to the calcium, so we stop operating, we stop building manganese for, they're kind of like the snowplows. We stay at home and snowplows come out. My years in Canada. Okay, so this is Northeast Brazil, right? Who are still having cases of microcephaly, and if you look at these young people, it's not pretty. They have some pretty serious issues, and walking, and their auditory is good though. That's very interesting. You sing them a song, you see the mothers sing them a song, they normalize. So that's very lovely. Okay, so just a review of that. And so That's microcephaly. So from that, when this, and the importance of our mitochondria, that's what I wanted to lead up to, our mitochondria. During this Northeast Brazil research, I also went back to the mitochondria. Because mitochondria have their own DNA. I think it's a 13, base pair. We have 23, I think, pair. And they have their own DNA. It's smaller than ours, but it's real. They have their own life inside of us by the millions. We have 100 billion cells. We have, 10, 20 trillion, a lot. 10, 20 times more. I mean, they're throughout our system. It's like they host us. How did that happen? How do we get that little bacteria bug in us? When Earth became more oxygenated, we evolved with all that oxygen. We have something in us that eats oxygen and just gives us nuclear fuel, like a rocket ship. It uses liquid oxygen, I think, and other things too. But so there are forms of energy, and oxygen is the healthiest one. Oxygen, growth, function, and I'm not talking about hyperbaric. That's, you've got to pair it with function and intent, directives, many things. So many things. It's fascinating. Look at all those things on the wall. And there's another one coming that has PhD on it. These were all done during an oxygenated journey. I've been studying oxygen for 20 years. And during the conscious state. And when I am oxygenated, there is no fear. The amygdala is unplugged. And that's an amazing thing. That's what we all need. We all need to, there's nothing that's going to hurt me here. Unless something actually squeezes through my screen and then it's just one little thing. But it's not like it was 200-300 years ago, or how we evolved in like a world teeming with insects and life and snakes and so many things that have become extinct since industrialization, or caged or controlled or fenced in or insecticided out. So we're evolving. We have the potential to evolve in this environment to the extent that we stay oxygenated during the conscious state, observe what is the top achievements, commit to the process. And when we're committed to something, all right, I'm committed to this. Do you see that breath? So it's oxygen. So, okay, so the mitochondria take that oxygen and they turn it into nuclear fuel. We call it adenotriphosphate, ATP, and 36 units of it, each oxygen. So I'm not sure if that's for both oxygens or each oxygen, but it takes the mitochondria take oxygen and just, it's a nuclear fuel factory. It's a factory. They call it an energy factory. So, and it has all sorts of parts to it and a distinct appearance, and they are passed down from generation to generation. Like the virus is now mutating so that it's going to have a generational effect on us if it stays around, if we don't stop it. Same with the mitochondria. They call it mitochondrial Eve. There's one stamp version of it. Well, if you look outside in Northeast Brazil, if you look around iron ore mines, this is iron ore mines, or other places where there is iron and manganese co-localize on the periodic table, and manganese gets iron out of the rock, and so there are traces of it there. So when this iron is coming through like a pipe, right? Here's a pipe, and the iron gets stuck on it. Do that in brown because that's kind of what it looks like. Iron gets stuck on it here, and it's in the presence of water. H2O is kind of like in our cell, kind of, and water and oxygen. So we've got iron, manganese, water, oxygen, and then one more element is the photosynthesis, sunshine, right? And we've talked about, not to get off topic, but in try one, we've got zinc and copper, which when they co-localize, do you remember what happens? When they co-localize on carbon plates for LED lights, they create a bright white light, right? So as far as I can tell, this is where the light comes inside of us to work with this mitochondria to keep it shaped and splitting oxygen, materializing biological biogenesis. Cool. Unfortunately, it took the Northeast Brazil microcephaly to figure this out. I followed that for many, 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 many months, as some of you might remember. So here we are kind of revisiting, the findings from that to help us understand what this virus is doing. Great. So let's put that aside. So this is not called mitochondria. This is called Gallionella. Gallionella. Like a gallon of water and Cinderella. Gallionella. I should remember maybe. So and I believe this is a bacteria. This is a metals-based, believe it or not, metals-based. Metals. How can something be a bacteria if it's metals-based? Well, it is. Metals-based bacteria. That's what it is. This is Gallionella here. And when it's in water, when it's contained in water, it maintains a bean shape, which is what we find in our mitochondria. So I'm theorizing now. I'm at the theorizing level and I've been for a while, that, Gallionella is our mitochondria. We can trace, that's our kind of an ancestor. You see it. In outdoors, outside this, when the water's not there, this is water kind of tripping through. It's not encased in water. It gets this shape when it's encased in water, as in our cell and body. It's encased in water and it maintains this shape. When it's not encased in water, it gets very gangly looking, very strange looking. But you can tell, you can definitely see the resemblance. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong. But you know what? Everything where there's causation, all you keep finding is evidence. Visual, scientific evidence, everything. So what's going to save us in this COVID-19 is to keep these things strong. Yes, keep these mitochondria strong. Because what we're finding in COVID-19 is they're not their bean shape anymore. They're like their Big Daddy falling apart shape, like blowing up a balloon too much. It's going to burst and not a balloon anymore. And that's the COVID version. This is the COVID-19 version of mitochondria. This is healthy. This is COVID-19. It's bursting. It's bursting apart at the seams, full of electrons. When it's healthy, these electrons are coming in and out all the time, making energy. And when it's when we are not oxygenating enough, this is what the virus is doing to us, doing to our mitochondria. So let's look at 3 mitochondria. We're going to look at the healthy one, which we just drew. You know, it's kind of a bean shape. It's just rattling out electrons and ATP all over the place. And the cell's like, woohoo! It's just chugging along in perfect condition, right? And when the COVID-19 comes in, these electrons, the oxygen is being thwarted at the lung level. It's not getting it. It's not able to offload the electrons. And so it's just engorging. It's just swelling inside, and it's like too much air in the balloon. It just splits apart. But when we are not, without the virus, when we're getting like low oxygen, it's doing the best it can with surviving, and it mutates. It mutates and gets into weird shapes, and eventually signals for the cell to, like, we can't take this anymore. We've got to, you know, it's a collective apoptosis, which means a signaled death, signals for cell death. The mitochondria say, we're not getting enough energy, action, oxygen, the directives are not fueled for this, cut it out. And so it's a fascinating world, and the mitochondria signal for the cell death. They still have they're signaling here, signals, and they're producing energy here. Woohoo! And here they have been like starved and stuffed with, you know, they're non-functional. They're rendered non-functional. There's no choice. Because no oxygen. This is low oxygen, and this is awesome oxygen. So we want this. We are dealing with this, with COVID-19, and these are the happy hypoxics. So they've got mutated mitochondria to begin with, and the things are like, oh yeah, I can't even, yeah. So that's how I see this thing going and how it's evolved. So what can we do? I do want to say that once again, before we go off, this metal-based bacteria, Gallionella, when it's in a water-covered environment, it maintains this shape, and it works with photosynthesis to create oxygenated life, to fuel and bond with us. This virus is bonding with us too. This virus is not a living thing. The virus is a conglomeration of bat hypoxic animal-derived elements. And I'm still looking into, there's a manganese core in the way this virus is located. I mean, this manganese in the core of it, I'm trying to follow right now, and I don't really have the right, I haven't found enough to report on it yet. Very few people talk about manganese. Okay, not magnesium. So Gallionella in like a pipe or something. If these, stuff's coming down the pipe, it gets all scraggly, and there's some kind of shapes to it. There's heavier shapes to it. There's crustaceans, and they have these lines on them, and then there's a lot of like gangly outreach type activity when they're in the air, aerated. But when they're enclosed in water, in a algae swamp, when they're encased with water, then they maintain this shape. So I'm just saying, if you look at Gallionella, you're going to see a lot of stuff that's But if it's when it's and this is coming out of pipe where there's air, right? There's air out here. So the hydration is not encasing it. The water molecules are not encasing it. It's a fascinating world. It's a fascinating field of research. And I look forward to following it because it's so exciting. And it tells us who we are, where we came from, what our needs are that are oxygenated ones. And we get to learn so much from metals that, and like I say, mitochondria feasibly it's a metals-based bacteria. Is it alive? Isn't it alive? It's got a DNA. What's going on? Well, it does. It's questionable whether it's alive or not, but there it is, right? It keeps us going. Without our mitochondria, we're back at the nematode. We're at the worm stage. We would not have evolved. Same with the virus, which concerns me. That there is a question whether it's living or not. It's just a conglomeration of proteins and elements, and yet it organizes itself within a cell, herds its young. What the heck? So, they're both kind of androids. But look at us. We need to understand what we're dealing with. And I believe that I'm contributing to the science of this, even though it's I'm maybe not in any silo. I'm a cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary scientist. And thanks for the like. Yeah, it's exciting. It's thrilling. I'm excited about it. So who are we? We are flesh and bones, aren't we now? We are sentient. We have feelings. We have fears. We are. We have manifest through flesh into something far beyond a metals-based. Are we metals-based? I don't know. I don't think so. But look at what's in us. Look at this. Look at this mitochondria. They are like nuclear fuel factories. Can flesh and bones do that? So we've bonded with them. And now this COVID-19, I believe, just from everything I've seen, may be moving in on this industrialized world and the environment we have created. We know global warming, carbon monoxide, all sorts of things that we've done through industrialization. And look at the iron ore mining in Northeast Brazil. That iron probably should be buried. Probably should stay buried. At one point it was, So we just have to learn from these disasters sometimes, but we have to learn. We have to learn and grow and improve from that. So that's what I'm trying to help us understand. COVID-19. In this period, we've had a March, April, May, June, a 4-month period where this planet has pretty much healed a bit. All the industrialization, everything stopped. Great. What a great experiment. And the cases that were going up and up and up and up and up are now kind of coming down, coming down, coming down. Well, then we bumped up activity again, didn't we? We said we're opening it up again, and the traffic's back. And I could see the mountains in the distance now during these 2 months. Those are the mountains. And now those same mountains are starting to get that purple haze on them again. That purple haze, right? I can't see them anymore. So it's coming back. So we will see what happens. And I'm hoping it doesn't happen, but with us coming back into no industry, low traffic, industry, and traffic again, right? So my concern is that this thing's going, all right, you're giving us what we came here to get. That's my concern, that as we reindustrialize, that the virus will get stronger again. I hope not. We'll see. It hasn't happened in Australia. Australia's gone down and they're going into winter and they're staying down. We are bumping up our industry again. We'll see what happens. Be blessed. Take care.